You are listening to Putting Heads on Beds, episode 10.
Welcome to the Putting Heads on Beds podcast, where through education, inspiration, and motivation, we help you to boost bookings and transform your business. And now, your host, Stephanie Thomas.
Well, hello there, it's Stephanie here and welcome to another episode of my Putting Heads on Beds podcast. It has been quite a while since I've done a new podcast episode. Although my original plan was to produce a new episode every fortnight, I'll be honest, I really haven't met that goal. I've had some challenges in my business over the past few months that have stopped me from doing this podcast. But I've worked them out, I've moved past them, and that's exactly what this episode is all about. I want to share what happened and what I did so that you can get value from it too. The first half of this year has been so busy. I really didn't stop. Everything was so full on. And I thought, however, as the summer months started to approach, that it was okay. I'd be able to have some downtime and get the opportunity to catch up on a lot of the things that were still outstanding. Things that I'd put on the back burner. Things that I'd put to one side because I didn't have enough time over the previous months. Things that needed to be done that hadn't been done. Well, things didn't quite turn out that way, as they often don't in the business world. And by the end of the summer, not only had I not had much of a chance of a break, but I still had a huge list of things that I either had to get done or move around or do something with. And it started to cause me quite a bit of stress and overwhelm. At the end of August, I'll be honest, it all got a bit too much. And I realised that I had to take some time out to rethink things and to make some changes because it couldn't continue the way it was. I had started the beginning of this year with a really clear action plan. I'd set my goals and my objectives for the year. That's my business goals, my revenue goals, and my personal goals too. I knew exactly what I was going to do and when I was going to do it. I knew when I'd be doing my mentoring and coaching. I had all my marketing and promotion planned out for the whole year. I knew what new courses I was going to launch and when. I knew when I was going to create all the content for those courses. I had all my podcast episodes planned out, detailing when I was going to launch and when I needed to do recordings. And I knew when I was going to take time off from the business. Everything was planned out. I was so organised and so in control. But as you know, things don't always go to plan. And a lot of things were still on my to-do list at the end of August. Things that should have been done quite a long time ago. A lot of those original goals hadn't been met. And I became really overwhelmed and frustrated. I desperately needed to sort out how I was going to get things back on track and reevaluate. And that's how this episode came to be. I thought to myself, well, if I needed to reevaluate and get things back on track as I did at the beginning of September, then maybe you do too. Maybe you'll find value in this extremely simple but powerful exercise I'm going to take you through. I thought it might help you to also spend some time looking at your business and asking what is it that you're not getting to? What goals haven't you reached? And what's driving you crazy right now? And what do you need to be doing and what do you not need to be doing? In this episode, I'm going to take you through the exercise that I actually carried out at the beginning of September to help you evaluate where you are right now in your business, to help you understand what's working, what's not working, and what needs to change. As I said, at the beginning of the year, I was really organised. I set all my goals and objectives, and for the first 6 months, I regularly measured those goals and kept evaluating things to ensure I was still on track and to keep me focused. But then things got really busy. To be honest with you, they got a little manic. I think I'd become a bit of a victim of my own success, and I didn't make the time to keep an eye on those goals and those objectives. I didn't make the time to measure whether I was achieving what I wanted to achieve. And because of that, things seriously started to fall to the wayside, and I'll be honest, I hadn't realised. When things all became a bit much a month ago, I realised that I hadn't taken the time to regularly monitor whether I was on track, to monitor whether I was doing the things that I needed to do. And I realised that I'd got caught up in doing things that were never on my original plan. In fact, I'd gone pretty much off route, to be honest with you. But working through this exercise helped me to evaluate how I had been spending my time. And working through this exercise will help you to evaluate the same. We all get taken off track occasionally, and we often fail to do some of the things that we set out to do. So I don't want you to be hard on yourself. Just know that the goal here is to bring those areas to light and to do something about it. We're going to focus on any areas where you may need to go out and get some help. We're going to focus on the areas where you need to be concentrating on that maybe you're neglecting at the moment. At the beginning of September, I took the time to refocus on the projects and tasks that I need to be working on. And I'm going to encourage you to do the same, to choose the projects and tasks you plan to focus on for the next 3 months. You know I like to make things actionable for you, so if you want to do this exercise, I have created a Back on Track workbook for you to work through. To get your hands on this entire exercise that I'm going to walk you through, you can download that workbook at puttingheadsonbeds.com/010. That's puttingheadsonbeds.com/010. If you're going to do this, grab the workbook, and that way you'll know exactly each step I want to take you through. Now, there are also timers involved, so you need to either get a kitchen timer or a stopwatch, and you're actually going to do some writing where you're going to time yourself. And I've put that into the workbook as well, so that you know exactly how long to spend on each of these steps that I'm going to take you through. So are you ready to dive into this exercise to kind of reevaluate your business and get things back on track again? Okay, let's do it. As I've shared, I decided to do this episode because I was feeling seriously challenged in my own businesses at the end of August, and I felt that everything was piling up on top of me. I'll be honest with you, I was pretty overwhelmed, and my nice quiet summer months really didn't pan out the way I thought they would. I hadn't cleared my to-do list, I hadn't had the chance to do podcasts and to create some of the content I wanted to create. I hadn't done half of the things that I wanted and needed to do. I think that many people can relate to some of those comments. You want to plan. You may even have made an effort at the beginning of the year to put a plan together, but everything's kind of fallen apart because some things didn't go as planned and other things suddenly land on your plate and your focus is diverted. When that happens, you often find yourself feeling that you're just kind of like floating out there just a bit. That's where I was at the beginning of September. Well, if that's the case for you, then now is a perfect time to fix this. Now is the perfect time to regroup and pull it back in before the end of the year. I knew that actually sharing this exercise that I used to sort of reevaluate and get things back on track was going to be valuable to many of you as well. And that's why I decided to actually make this a podcast episode and tell you what I did to get things back on track in my business. Don't forget, if you're going to work through this exercise, grab the workbook that I've supplied with this podcast. And you'll also need to grab some highlighter pens. You know, if you're anything like me and you love stationery, then you're going to have a lot of highlighters around. So grab several different colours of highlighters or different colour pens because you're going to use those as we get going. And don't forget, you also want to grab a timer of some form, a kitchen timer or your phone. That is all you need to work through this exercise. The workbook, some highlighters and a timer. I don't want you to have your computer or phone on while doing these steps I'm about to share with you. If possible, switch them off. If you're going to use a timer on your phone or on your computer, then just make sure it's the only thing that you can see, that you don't suddenly see emails popping up and distracting you or anything like that. I want you to get really focused for the next hour and work through these 5 steps. The first thing I want you to do, step 1, is that I want you to spend 30 minutes doing a month in review. I want you to set your timer for 30 minutes, and in that time, I want you to write down every single thing you can remember you've done in the past month. We're going to do a month in review, so we're looking back at the last month and writing down everything you can think of that shows how you spent your time in your business. Now, I know this isn't super easy, and I know that you're going to have to really think about it. Maybe you can look at the diary to sort of prompt you about what happened and what you did. Look at any to-do lists that you used and put together. You need to really try and refresh your memory. How did you spend your time in your business over the last month? Write down every single thing you can remember. Write down the phone calls you took and the bookings you took, or the phone calls you made. Write down the time you spent cleaning rooms and talking to guests, the time you spent cooking breakfast or shopping for supplies, time you spent reading emails or writing emails, time you spent updating availability online, time you spent writing your blogs, reading other blogs, time you spent listening to podcasts or learning new skills, and include time that you had out of the business. All of this needs to be written down. The goal here is to figure out honestly where you've been spending your time. And I want you to spend a really good 30 minutes doing this. Now, I know it might mean for the first sort of 5-10 minutes that you're just staring into space because you're thinking, well, you can't even remember. I know that it is hard to look back. I did this exercise at the beginning of the month, so I know exactly where you are. But if you focus, and again, look for notes that you made, look in the diary, look at emails you've sent, emails you've received. Just try to remember where you spent time in the last month. And that's step 1. You want to give yourself a full 30 minutes for this. And then when you've done that, step 2 is I want you to take another 30 minutes and basically do a brain dump. This is very different than step 1 because instead of looking back over the last month, I want you to take a look forward to the next 3 months. Over the next 3 months, what are all of the things you need to get done in your business? Everything needs to go on this list. List the work you need to do to provide service to your guests, the cleaning, the cooking, the gardening, the shopping, the chatting. List the people you need to get back to or you need to get in contact with. Then list the things you need to do to boost bookings, the offers you need to create, the emails you need to write, the blog posts that are waiting to be created, your newsletters that are waiting to be designed, phone calls you should be making, accounts that need updating, new marketing projects you need to work on, maintenance or refurbishment projects you need to carry out. Anything and everything that you think you need or you should do over the next 3 months needs to go on this list. Now, it might help if you pull out your goals. At the beginning of the year, if you wrote a list of goals or projects that you wanted to complete this year or reach, then grab that right now. That's something that will help you to remember all of the stuff you wanted to get done before the end of the year. The goal here is to try and get all of this out of your head. I thought it might help if I just gave you a little snapshot of my own list that I created when I did step 2, the 30-minute brain dump a month ago. Again, remember, you want to give yourself a full 30 minutes. Do not cheat here. Give yourself that full 30 minutes and write down everything you can think of. This means personal and business. Let's be honest, as business owners, it all mixes together anyway. You'll have things that are floating around your head that have nothing to do with business, but they're taking up space and they're probably stressing you out a little bit so that you're not doing your best work when you're sitting down and focusing on the business. So I say that because I'm going to read you my list and you're going to hear a few random personal things as well. It's just kind of part of this exercise. It all has to go down. So here's what my list looked like. Not the whole list because it was long. I actually took more than 30 minutes because there was lots in my head I needed to get out. But this is the first 15 things that were on this list. Number 1 was to find a new home. Quite a major task, really. Part of the reason that everything got a bit on top of me at the end of August was because we put our house on the market at the end of the summer. We'd always planned to do this and we thought that the end of the summer would be a brilliant time to do it, as quite often things go a little quiet work-wise over the summer. And there was quite a bit involved in getting the house ready to go up for sale. I had to do a major clean and declutter of all our personal belongings. There were several trips to the charity shop over the summer months. We had to get different estate agents out for valuations and decide on who we wanted to sell our house for us. And then when we finally got this for sale board up, we had to do some viewings. We were very lucky once it went on the market in that, to be honest with you, it sold very much straight away, which was great. But at that point, we hadn't even started looking for a new home. And the fact that we want to relocate to Cornwall, which is about 200 miles away from where we currently live, wasn't going to make things easy. And I think that's when overwhelm really kicked in and why I had to work through this exercise that I'm working with you now. So number one on my list back then was to find a new home. As an aside, after several trips backwards and forwards to Cornwall, we have found a new home. And as I record this podcast, the process is underway. So hopefully everything will go smoothly with the sale of our home and the purchase of our new home. And keeping fingers crossed, we will all be living in Cornwall before Christmas. But that was the first thing on my list. Number 2 on my list was to put together a plan for creating my new direct mail course and marketing it. And number 3 on my list was then actually creating that course, producing all the slides, putting together all the cheat sheets and the checklists, and then actually recording the videos, and then putting everything onto my membership hub online. Number 4 was to update the smart marketing training videos and content all ready for launch number 2, which will be happening in November. And number 5 was to figure out a new plan for podcast creation. As I've said, I was really stressed out at the beginning of August because I totally neglected this podcast for a couple of months. I just hadn't had the time to do them. I was waking in the middle of the night, frustrated because I was not providing the service that I'd promised. And so finally, after I wrote all this list and did all this exercise, I finally came up with a new plan to get me back on track. Number 6 on my list was to get quotes from removal companies to pack and move all our belongings. As I said, the personal stuff drops in there as well. Number 7 was to promote my live social media training course that's coming up in October in Devon. Number 8 was to plan my 2018 calendar. I needed to get that done so that my clients can all start to pre-book their private mentoring meetings. Number 9 was to book an appointment at the hairdressers because I hadn't been there for a while. Number 10 was to start a testimonial campaign. Number 11 was to update my website. I had a whole list of changes I wanted to make on that. Number 12 is I want to launch my next mentoring program this month. So that was on the list. Number 13 was to organise some birthday celebrations. October's a big month for our family this year. Our daughter Cara was 18 last weekend and I'll be hitting the big 50 in about a week's time. So I had to do some planning all around that and organising some weekends away. Number 14 was to order some new stationery supplies. I kept meaning to do that and I hadn't done that. And number 15 on the list was to send a card to one of my clients who'd just become a grandma. This is just a quick snapshot of the things that were floating around in my head at the beginning of September. As I say, this was only just a part of that list, just the first few things that I'd actually sort of written down on paper. So back to your own list. Remember, you need to do this for the next 3 months. Every single thing that you can think of that needs to be done, get it out of your head and onto paper. It is for business, but as I said, put in personal stuff too if it's floating around in your head. Anything that came to mind, I put on this list. And as you can see from that little snapshot I gave you, there are some big projects on there, but there are also some random small tasks and some personal random things as well. But all of that stuff was taking up an awful lot of space in my head. A lot of that was why I wasn't sleeping soundly at night, because it was just rushing through my head. And the biggest thing is that none of it was planned out yet. None of it was scheduled. And I knew I needed to get it done, but I just didn't know when I was going to get it done. And that was causing me so much stress. And that's why I decided I needed to spend time getting back on track. Now, one more thing. During this step 2, during the 30-minute brain dump, you are not thinking of new ideas. This is not a time for creativity and new ideas. There is a time and a place for that, but this isn't it. The reason for that is, I'm sure you've got enough on the horizon without thinking of new stuff to do yet. So this brain dump is all about the stuff you should be doing or you think you should be doing in the next 3 months. It is not a time to create new ideas. We don't need to add anything new on this list at this moment in time. So now we're on step number 3. So the next step is I want you to grab one of those highlighters. It's time to start highlighting your list of the things you need to do over the next 3 months. It's probably got at least 30 things on it, I would guess. It should have some small silly little tasks and some big projects, but I'm guessing you'll probably have about 20 to 30 things on that list as a minimum. If not, then you probably didn't dig deep enough in terms of what's floating around in your head, and you might need to go back and do that exercise again and really refocus. But it might be that there are just a few things on your list because you might be way more organised than I was at the end of the summer. And if you are, then you should just do a little proud happy dance because do you know what? That is really great. Be very, very proud of yourself. Anyway, I want you to take one of the highlighters and I want you to highlight all the projects and tasks that you've listed in your list in step 2 that are going to produce bookings and revenue, either directly or indirectly. Those income producing activities. So that's what I want you to do in step 3. I want you to highlight those projects and tasks listed in your brain dump that are the money makers, the ones that you know are going to generate revenue and create profits. Those are the ones that I want you to keep your eye on as you move into step 4. And in step 4, this is where we're going to identify where you're wasting your time and where you could use some extra support. I want you to look back first at the exercise from step 1, where you did your month in review. And I want you to take a different colour highlighter and highlight the tasks that were, to be honest, either a waste of your time over the last month or the tasks that you were doing that you know in your heart of hearts you should actually be delegating in some way or another. Go back to step 1, and if you did a really good job there and you really spent time figuring out how you spent the last month, you will definitely be able to identify some areas where you were wasting your time or you were doing things that you shouldn't be doing in your business. You may find some projects and tasks where you shouldn't be struggling to put things in place, where you're spending so much time trying to get things in place. Areas where really you should be outsourcing that to an expert. It might be the bookkeeping. It might be help with the marketing. Or there's going to be those sort of £10 an hour jobs like the cleaning and the laundry that you shouldn't be doing. You can actually make so much more money in your business when you spend your time where it really makes a big impact. Many of you listening know that you've been thinking about hiring a cleaner or a housekeeper or a chambermaid for quite a long time. Or you may be a bit like me. You've actually hired somebody to help, but like when I first hired a cleaner when I was a B&B owner, I wasn't actually using them like I should. I was too afraid to let go of the cleaning. I was a bit of a control freak, but letting go of that control and having somebody who's good deal with that side of the business will free you up so much. And that is important for our sanity and for the growth of our business. So again, you're going back to step 1, you're taking a different coloured highlighter and you're highlighting those areas where either you're wasting your time, struggling to do something that you really can't do, or you're wasting your time doing things that you know you should be delegating. And then I want you to go into step 2, where you did the 30-minute brain dump on all of the things swimming around in your head that you know you need to get done or think maybe you should get done over the next 3 months. Now, we've already highlighted all of the money-making projects and tasks that are on that list. So now I want you to get another different coloured highlighter. I want you to highlight all of the things that you put on that list, step 2, that you could either move to another date more in the future, so maybe at the beginning of next year, or things that you could delegate to somebody else. Again, just to make that clear, you're going back to step 2, highlighting anything that you shouldn't be doing in your business or any project that you don't need to be working on right now over the next 3 months, things that can actually be moved further on. Maybe something snuck in and you really didn't have plans to fulfill that project now. And now that you've looked back at all of your goals that you set at the beginning of the year, you might be realising, a bit like I had, that actually you'd gotten a bit off track. So highlight all those things that don't need to be done in the next 3 months. So highlight the projects that you've just got off track and they shouldn't be there right now, and mark off any projects or tasks that you wrote down that could be delegated to somebody else. Maybe it's about finally hiring the cleaner to help you. I know that there is a lot of highlighting going on right now, but we're just identifying those areas where you likely shouldn't be spending your time, and that's what step 4 is all about. I just want to share some things from my own evaluation when I did this exercise in terms of how I was spending my time and what it showed me. The first thing it showed me is that I realised that I was spending too much time working on my numbers. I like to really keep my fingers on the pulse when it comes to numbers, and it is very important in your business. I regularly monitor cash flow. I always know exactly how much profit I'm making every single month. I always measure the return on investment of every single marketing piece I do, and I always regularly monitor my fixed costs. Knowing the numbers is essential, but when I did this exercise, I realised just how much time I spent working on these figures. And I realised that actually this was something that somebody else could be doing for me. And actually, if they're specialists, they'll probably even do it a whole lot better than I can do it. So one of the first things I did after doing this exercise is I went to speak to my accountant, and I just handed over all of this side of my business to her and her team. Now I have a live dashboard that they produce for me where I can look at any time of the day to see exactly where my business is going on. I now code all the marketing activities that I do so they can measure the return on investment that we're actually getting from those activities. This is going to free up so much of my time. It's not something that shouldn't be done. It's not something that I can put to one side. It has to be done. It is vital. But it doesn't mean that I should be the one who's doing it. And this exercise also highlighted why I was struggling to regularly publish this podcast. It made me realise that I had to change the way I was managing my podcast. I love doing my podcast, but they are a lot of work, and I have to do a lot of prep time and a lot of work to get just one episode published. And when I did that brain dump and I got everything out of my mind on what I needed to do to start publishing episodes on a regular basis, I realised that, if I wanted to do a podcast every other week, I needed someone to help me. It just hasn't been going as smoothly as I'd hoped, and I couldn't figure out why I was struggling to get a new one published every fortnight. It's only 2 a month. But when I did this exercise, I knew I needed help. I hadn't actually recognised how much went into publishing a new episode. I prep all the content, I create all the downloads, I do all the recording and then all the editing of the episodes. I then have to upload it all to the hosting site or the online work. I add it to iTunes, I create a web page to go with it, I create download links, then I promote the episode via email and out on social media, and so much more. And when my brain dump highlighted how much work was involved, it made me realise that I just couldn't do this alone if I wanted to get a new episode out every other week. And so I've made a commitment to find someone to help me, and that's on this month's to-do list, which we'll talk about later. When I did this exercise, one of the things that I found out was I just need to approach things differently and not try to do it all myself. And I recognised that's what I needed to do to solve some of my problems. I want you to solve some of the things in step 4 before you move on to step 5. By the time we get to step 5, which is our final step, I want you to be really clear about the tasks and the projects that you're going to be working on for the rest of the year, where you will be boosting bookings, the things you need to do to generate revenue. And I want you to clean up those areas that just aren't working. If it's time you're struggling with, you have got to ask for more help or hire more help. Now, I hold my hands up here. I know this isn't easy. Even today, I do not ask for help enough. And back when I was a B&B owner, I had such a struggle giving up the cleaning side of things and justifying the cost of employing somebody to help. But when I hired an amazing housekeeper who took over doing the rooms, I cannot tell you how much of a difference it made. Being free to focus on the business rather than always working in it just took my business to a completely different level. And the extra profits that I was able to bring in, the extra bookings that I was able to bring in, easily gave me a fantastic return on investment on the cost of employing somebody. You need to be strong and give up control occasionally. If I can do it, you can do it. So we're on to the last step, step 5. Once you make some decisions in step 4, in this step, you're going to plan out what you need to do in your business, what you need to work on over the coming months. So first of all, complete the Back on Track quarterly planner that you'll find in the workbook. Identify what you need to be doing over the next 3 months. These are the income generating tasks that you highlighted in step 4. Then, using your completed quarterly planner, I want you to complete a monthly planner for each of the next 3 months, detailing what you're going to do in each of those months. And then all you need to do is just focus on the planner for the coming month and what you need to do each week. Now, if you want to take it further, I've also included a daily Back on Track planner that you can use to then help you plan out that month to individual days. I appreciate that planning out the next 3 months might be a bit overwhelming for you, and you might just want to start out with the next month, and that's fine if you do. But if you can, doing the next 3 months will really make a huge difference. If I'm honest with you, actually, this part of the exercise did take me a good couple of hours. I guess I kind of told a bit of a lie in the beginning of this podcast, not intentionally, but I said this whole exercise would take you about an hour. But actually, thinking back, it actually took me a good afternoon because I literally planned everything out for the next 3 months. But I've been working to those plans since I created them, and it's got everything back on track. Let me give you an example. This month, my objectives are to create a new online course, to finalise the plans for my live social media course that's taking place at the end of the month, to launch my next mentoring programme, and to restart the Putting Heads on Beds podcast, and to move house if everything goes to plan. So I've broken down all of those things that I need to do in the next month into weeks. Last week, I finalised and launched my new direct mail course. Big tick. This week, week 2, I've restarted the podcast. You know that, right? Because you're listening to a new episode now. And I'll be putting together the plan for my mentoring programme, which I'll be launching next week. In week 3, I'm going to work on some new content inside of Smart Marketing, ready for the next launch in November. And in week 4, I'm going to be hosting my live event, and I'm going to start looking for somebody to help me with the podcast episodes. And in between that, getting ready to move, organising the removal companies. And of course, I'll still be carrying out my day-to-day work in that, my one-to-one mentoring and coaching sessions. I'll be doing that all throughout the month. And I'll be working with my private clients and students. But this is all about getting the things done that will help me to grow my business. That's the kind of stuff I've included in my monthly planner. And I just wanted to sort of paint a picture of that for you. You need to decide what you need to do. It might be marketing or the bookkeeping or learning new skills or content creation. But whatever it is, then you need to plan it out. I want to put out a challenge to you that I've sort of set myself as well. And it is a bit of a tough one, so just brace yourself. I want to challenge you to only put 3 to 5 things on your list per day. I want you to only work on 3 to 5 things. I learned that if I have more than 5 different things on my planner per day, I know that I'm never going to get them done. When I first started using this system, then I used to put sort of 8, 9 or 10 things on one day, and I'd never get half of them. So I would have to move them over to the next day, or the deadlines just kept shifting and shifting. So what I have learnt is that between 3 and 5 things are achievable. If we tell ourselves we're only working on 3 things in a day, or 4 or 5 things, maybe a blog post, putting an email together, making some phone calls, that's it, you can be sure it will get done. I know when I only have 5 things, I'll be focused and not overwhelmed. But if I also have 2 mentoring meetings online and a webinar to do and a phone call with my assistant and then a haircut, silly stuff like that too, I'm shattered and I never finish any of it because I just get too overwhelmed. In my head, I have too much to think about, and what happens? I just shut down and I hardly get anything done. But I know it's really hard while you're planning the next few months, but if you can commit to no more than 5 things a day, 3 really is ideal, then I promise you will zip through your tasks and projects every single day. And also make sure to build time in for yourself and some time for your family. That kind of stuff is really, really important. Here is the last thing I'm going to say to you. When I first started putting my plan together for this quarter, I realised something had to change because all of those income revenue tasks that I had on my list, I just couldn't fit it all in to the next 3 months. And that's when I recognised that I had to find different ways of other people helping me even more. So I've since handed over all the accounting side of things to my accountant. I'm looking for someone to help me with my podcast. And I know that not everyone listening has the luxury of being able to hire people to help. But this is where you have to really start to get realistic. If you decide that it is too much and you simply don't have the money to hire extra help, then you've got to find ways to work smarter and do less, but to actually continue to make a big impact and make more money. And this is very, very possible. You do have to dig deep for that kind of stuff, but I want to encourage you to do this. If you have got a business mentor or a business coach, then they should be helping you to do these things. I would never promote pushing yourself to exhaustion. I'm always trying to figure out how not to work quite as much as I do. And it is something that is a constant battle with me. And that's why I've got my loved ones around me who do keep me in check. And I hope you do too. Make sure that you share what's going on. Make sure that you have people to talk to. If it's not your loved ones, if it's not a business mentor or coach, then if you are a member of the Creating Bookings community, our private Facebook group, that's where you can offload. You're in a safe spot there. And if you're not a member, then you need to head over there now because, as they say, a problem shared is a problem halved. So there you have it. Step 5 is to get inside those planners and plan your main projects and tasks with just a couple of things a day and definitely no more than 5 things a day. I know this is hard, but if you do it, please come and tell me. Post on the Creating Bookings page and let me know that you're doing this because it will encourage me to stay true to that challenge as well. I'm sharing this because I want you to know where I've been and what I'm doing. But if you share it too, then we can hold you accountable and we can support you in your journey too. And once you've got all this in your planner, then you need to breathe a little bit. Maybe have a glass of wine or take a walk to just say, I've done this and it's over. It was tough, but you did it. Celebrate that you've got through the exercise. And then as you get going, you might be able to implement what I do. Every Sunday night, I like to look at my planner for the week ahead. So I can get really clear about what's happening and I can make sure everything's really doable. And then every evening before I walk away from my desk, I check my plan for the next day, just so I'm really clear about what's happening tomorrow. I like to be clear before it happens, and doing that has helped me immensely as well. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'm not perfect at this. I work at it every single day. But I want to just sort of say what I've been working on, what has helped me, and share it with you. This exercise has really allowed me to get clear for the next 3 months. And now I feel that I can breathe just a little bit easier. So I hope that you find value in it too. Be nice to yourself and very patient with yourself as you work through these 5 steps so that you can work smarter and have a little bit more breathing room as you do everything. Now that we've gone through the entire exercise, as you can see, it is a simple exercise, but there are some steps involved. And if you do it right, it can be really powerful. It will allow you to get quite excited about the next 3 months of your business. If you want to do this exercise and you want the workbook so that I can walk you through step by step, then you'll find a link in the show notes. So just visit puttingheadsonbeds.com/010. And I can't wait to talk to you again in 2 weeks' time. So in the meantime, have a great couple of weeks. Bye for now.
And that's a wrap for this week's show. Thanks for listening to the Putting Heads on Beds podcast. Make sure you visit us at creatingbookings.com.